The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney. This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
Well, welcome to my studio. You know this as the studio that I do my broadcast from, the podcasting, webinars that I do, etc. But what you probably don't realize is this is also my innovation studio. So the whole studio is outfitted with everything from hardware gear, where I have built prototypes using Raspberry Pis, to my sketchbooks, my models, different types of materials. I collect different materials that may result in products being used or designed or prototyped for other companies. Now, you may think because I'm a CEO, why do I have an innovation studio? And that is because I still do side projects, for other businesses. I typically don't take pay for them. I'm usually doing them for friends or acquaintances or people that I know. But it keeps me sharp, and and I'm on a bunch of advisory boards, and as a result of that, I'll whip together some concepts, some ideas, and some prototypes. But the question I get a lot is what do I use as inspiration? What are the things that I keep handy in my studio when I need to be inspired, when I need to be coming up with new sets of ideas? Well, I am a very visually oriented innovator. I originally went to college to study architecture at the University of Illinois. I switched to computer graphics, albeit I'm a software engineer. I am very visually oriented. And so for me, it's inspirational materials are things that kind of tickle that creativity bone in me, and they tend to be visually oriented. So what I'm going to share with you is those books, specifically books that I keep close by. They're piled up on top of my desk. I've got bookshelves lining the entire studio, but the books was what I find. When I need inspiration, I'll go pull a handful of books out, and I will use those as my inspiration. So I'm going to walk you through some of these books and give you kind of a little bit of the background as to why. Now, I'm not going to be able to dive into a lot of detail, but I'll give you the reason why these are. Now, I'm going to go from the very general, right? Books not directly related to innovation or creativity. And as we go through the list of books, I will get more and more and more specific. And we will have a list of all the books that I'm talking about here in the show notes. So don't feel like you got to scratch out notes or whatever, but it's more about explaining to you how I use books as an inspiration. So the first book up is the Visual Encyclopedia of Frank Lloyd Wright. As I said before, I originally went to college. I was going to be an architect. I grew up in Chicago. Every kid in Chicago that's got any form of a visual orientation was very familiar with Frank Lloyd Wright. That's where he started his career. And as a result, everybody wants to be the next Frank Lloyd Wright, and that's what I was planning to go to college for. Now, why do I use this particular book? What is it about it? Well, one, I'm really in love and fascinated by architecture. I've probably have visited most, if not all, of the Frank Lloyd Wright buildings or buildings built by Taliesin, which were his apprentices or interns, whatever term you want to use. But for me, it's about reminding me to create your own style. Don't do what everybody else does, and that's where Frank Lloyd Wright really set himself out right off the bat, was by through the fact that he created his own language, his own design style, his own sense of aesthetics, his own kind of prioritization of importance. The feeling that you get when you walk into a Frank Lloyd Wright building is completely different than you would have in any other building. And so as a result, for me, it's not so much he's got product ideas in here that I could kind of riff on, but it's more about that reminder of non-conformity. Don't do what everybody else does. Create something in your own language. Now, the next book I want to talk about is one called A Pattern Language. Pattern Language comes from Christopher Alexander, professor at UC Berkeley. Now, I don't even know. I didn't bother to, look this up to see. So the original copyright is 1977. Now, what this is this is a study and a book that breaks out all of what's called patterns that you find if you were doing a systems planning approach to buildings, houses, even cities. This is one of a multi-book series. I own all of them. And what really got me triggered on pattern language, though, was that this book was the book that was used by the developers of the original Sim games. So the Sims, where you create your own people, you designed your houses, you built communities, etc. The developers who were building those games actually tapped into what's in this book and in the other series from Christopher Alexander, along with all of his co-authors, around what makes for a certain kind of a structure around towns, cities, central areas in an area. How do you think about the balance between residential, commercial, things like sporting areas or shopping centers, etc. So, and again, this is not so much you can't take what's in this book and directly apply it to a new product or a new service, but it helps me think about the fact that there are these patterns. There are patterns that make and generate a certain kind of a feeling, a certain kind of an experience, and that's what this reminder is. And actually, it's quite interesting because there's a number of things in this book that does take into account how to create that feeling. How do you create a feeling of excitement around walking into a space or experiencing something? So, again, pattern language, Christopher Alexander. Not sure how easy, how hard it is to create this book. I've had this book forever, and when I bought it, it was $49.95. So who knows what they're charging now? But I've got the entire collection of this, and it keeps a prominent position on my bookshelf. The next book I wanted to talk about was one called Designing Interactions, put together by Bill Moggridge. And you can see by the list of all the authors down the left-hand side, it's a hardback book, but it's about how do you design experiences. And it takes the experiences from a variety of different experiences. So, in fact, we just talked about Chris Alexander. Will Wright, who is the developer of The Sims, used the pattern language book that I just showed you, and it actually talks a little bit about it here in how they developed the game. What was the original concept? What was it they were trying to do? How they do the design work? etc. The one area of particular interest that I wanted to point out was Dennis Boyle and the development of the Palm 5. If you're old enough to remember the Palm product lines and the handsprings, and then the Trio, which became the phone for it, the accessories like cameras, and then ultimately resulting in the product. I was always a big Palm in love with it, and I had the opportunity when I was the CTO for Hewlett Packard to actually buy Palm and bring it into HP. I was part of that executive team that negotiated the deal. I led the technical due diligence to acquire WebOS and the overall product. This is a great book because it gives you it's a single book, but you get a wide range. It's got like the original work on dealing with things like Google, etc. Great book, good one to have in your library. Again, it's a pretty big book, but I have it and I keep it in a pretty prominent place. The next book I want to talk about is The Universal Principles of Design. And this is talking about, it's kind of the collection of all of what I would call the design rules that you should. Now, there's a lot of other books out there that maybe even are a little bit more current on this, but this is a case of not only showing you what to do, but also where problems crop up in the form of what doesn't work. For instance, it talks about even things like how do you design your user interfaces for your menus in correlation to the importance of placement of accelerators and brakes in cars. Knowing that consistent pattern movement when you're moving from your foot from the accelerator to the brake plays out in user interface designs and things like that. Again, another one to kind of give you some good insights. I've actually, over the years, I've developed checklists out of this book and the Designing Interactions. And I use those checklists, literally as a way to, think about what not to do, what things to avoid, those kinds of things. Now, this is actually the second book in a series from Michael Michalko. This book is called Cracking Creativity. The one prior to that is one that most everybody has, which is Thinker Toys. And Thinker Toys is, if you don't have it and you're in the innovation space, go get it. Just get it. Michael has done a phenomenal job of literally collecting up all the tools, all of the approaches, all of the ways of running brainstorming and the use of Scamper and thousands of other kinds of it. In this case, and you can tell, I've actually got underlines in this book. It tells you how often I go back and refer to this. But again, this is kind of a reminder, less about the specific tools, but actually walks you through, and then of coming up with new ideas. In fact, here's one that says, cut up the indexes of your books and throw those fragments into a fishbowl, and then randomly pull them out and use those as sparking points. Right? I put it. My comment here is possible software system could create a book or create an application or a tool. But again, I have this book. I have Thinker Toys. It's actually, I've lent it out to somebody. So I didn't have it, or I would have been showing that one. I also have the Think Pack, which are the cards that go with Thinker Toys. Pretty much anything Michael puts out, I buy. So he's one of those authors that gets it. He's a great collector of creativity and innovation tools that everybody can use, and he explains them in a very clear and concise way. So anything Michael produces, go ahead and get it. And then the other book in the kind of creativity space that I love is the Six Thinking Hats from Dr. DeBono. Now, Dr. DeBono doesn't never realized. I have never had a chance to meet with him, and I haven't followed his career most recently. I mean, he has put out books periodically, but I kind of got turned on to the whole creativity and innovation space by a TV show that he did that was broadcast on the U.S. PBS station back when I was a kid. And I programmed my parents' VHS tape recorder. I taped the show. It wasn't always reliable. I drove my parents nuts to make sure I was home so I could watch it, have my notebook out so I could take notes. And he basically taught over a series of, I think it was like 6 or 7 shows, a small audience of everything from kids to adults, men, women, different things about unleashing your own creativity. And I just loved it. I loved it. And that's what kind of sparked me into eventually going in and doing work in the innovation space. So this is, if you're not familiar with it, it's not a very thick book. It's a pretty quick read. The different colors of what Dr. DeBono refers to as the hats forces you to play a certain role when you are trying to innovate. That can be, you're the optimist, you're the pessimist, you're the whatever. And then you rotate the hats. So everybody gets a chance to kind of play. Some people are the builders, some are the rational thinkers. So again, if you have not read this, you should get this book. And again, it's not so much of an inspiration because once you write it, you kind of get it. But it's another book that I actually keep on my shelf close by my desk to remind me about changing my perspective. Don't just think I can innovate by myself and I can come up with really great ideas. I literally have to run through the hats and play all the different roles through that process. So it's more of a, seeing this spine on my shelf reminds me that it takes more, you're not going to innovate by yourself. It's a team. It is clearly a team sport. So now, as you know, I went through that. I went through kind of my architecture books that I use as inspiration, my design books, so the Universal Principles of Design, and then Designing Interactions. And then we got into the innovation and creativity books. Now, here are a couple of other books. These are more fun, but I think I love these books. I keep them handy. It just kind of makes me laugh. This one is The World's Worst Invention. It's the most stupid gadgets machines ever made. Now, this particular book is very graphically oriented. You may not always agree. Like it says the Easy Bake Oven was a stupid, was not a great product. The floating bed. We got the hula hoop in here. We've got different kinds of airplanes, car alarm systems. Now, this collection of books, it was put together by Jack Watkins. I'm not sure you'll even be able to find this book because you can't tell, but I've got a torn off sticker here, which means it tells me that I got it off like the $1 bin at Barnes & Noble or some bookstore, Borders, when Borders was still around. And so I probably pulled it up out of the bin. But again, it What's really interesting is in some cases, this book was done. This book's got to be 15 years old. Um, and so some of the things that they in here say are stupid or worst inventions actually went on to become big successes. Be careful of saying that a new product or a new invention or a new innovation is the worst, because it may just be timing. When this version of that product came out, may not be all that great, right? People may think of the old Yahoo site as being horrible, right? But then Google came along and replaced it with a better search engine. So even though this book tries to put a kind of a stake in the ground that says, these are the worst ideas, that are out there, in reality, you have to be a little careful, because the timing may not be right. And after this book came out, a number of things in this book actually turned out to be really great ideas. So I use this again as just a visual, set of ideas, things that you maybe thought about that, went away because they didn't make it. But you never know. There might be new technologies that all of a sudden came out and are now more practical today with today's technology. So again, The World's Worst Inventions by Jack Watkins. And then this is a book that is not so much, it's kind of in a similar vein as Worst Inventions, but it's also a book that talks about things that is not about inventions so much, but it's also about human failings, things that just don't don't work out, or humans got involved in it, right? So these are all kind of funny pictures, right? Hard to see this one, but it's a sign in the front of a store. It says, "We're here to serve you," and their only hours are 10 to 2 on Wednesday. Or this one at I guess would be at a hardware store, where it says it's unbreakable, yet you can see the broken. And again, this one is actually a funny, humorous book. And in this one, gets into just reminding us of just human nature and things that we may think are funny. I mean, this one is actually hilarious, right? So this is Winnie the Pooh in a ring, and it's called a Pooh Splash Zone, and it's a toilet seat. So, this is again just reminding us of the human failings of what goes on out there. No matter how well you think you've designed something, people can do the unexpected with whatever innovation, product, service that you can think of. And so this one's a little bit close to home. You can't see it, but that's a traditional sign that you see when you come into the state of Colorado, which is where I live and where my studio's at. It says, "Welcome to colorful Colorado." And it's pretty much white and gray. Welcome to winter in Colorado. So, again, fail harder. This comes from the failblog.org. There's a similar book to this. If you don't have it, it's on the whole experience of autocorrect. So you go to send a text and it autocorrects it. Interestingly enough, my agent for my book, Beyond the Obvious, is the same agent for that author, the author who came up with the autocorrect. And I've got the paperback version someplace. I literally can't get past 3 or 4 without laughing in hysterics. So you may want to check that book out also. But again, fail harder, failblog.org community. These are all the pictures and images that get posted up there. This book is a little old. There's probably been some even more humorous ones that have been posted. So I wanted to kind of cover both the worst inventions and fail harder to remind you that, yes, you use these other books for inspirations, but you have to think about them in the context of how do you innovate. And so I wanted to just share with you, these are books that I keep here right next close to my desk here in the studio. So when I'm starting to kick off a new project, a new idea, I'm mentoring or coaching an organization, they need help with, maybe they have a kernel of an idea, but they're looking for some help on turning this product or this concept into something that's going to be big and meaningful. These are just some of the books. These are, I've literally got thousands of books, but I just picked these out to kind of give you a sampling, starting with my visual orientation with things like Frank Lloyd Wright, going all the way through to books that are very more specific to innovation and creativity, but then also the humorous ones that remind us that we are all human. We try our best. Some things we come up with just aren't going to work. In fact, maybe in a future show, I'll share that. And so if you've got books, things that you're doing that you use for inspiration, share them. Post a comment on the show here. Let us know what books or other things. In a future show, I'll start pulling together some other things here in the studio, give you more of a view of the innovation studio, how it's set up, how I work on new projects here, tools that I have here, and ways I go about starting with a blank sheet of paper and turning that into products and services. So you want to, but if you've got books that you find specifically inspiring, go ahead and post them in the comment. Would love to see them. And if you post in the comments, I'll reply to every comment you post. With that, I want to thank you for taking time out of joining us for today's show. And hopefully you found the content beneficial and helpful. Would love to hear your feedback on it. Drop us a note. You can send me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. That comes directly to me. And again, I would ask, please let other people know, share, tell people about the show. When we started this podcast back in 2005, we did it in response to Bob Davis, my mentor. When I asked him how I could pay him back, he laughed. He goes, "There's no way you could pay it back. You have to pay it forward." This is my effort to pay it forward, to share with you the experiences and lessons learned over my career as an innovator, an inventor, a technologist, a futurist, author, podcaster, a whole bunch of hats that I've worn, but wanting to share with you my experiences, what worked, what didn't work, my regrets, my successes, and my failures. And hopefully it helps you as you go through your own careers to avoid some of the pitfalls I fell into and to have great success with all of your creativity and all of your innovation efforts. So thanks again for taking the time out of the busy schedule. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.